Hello, everyone.
Hey, yeah, hi, welcome to the StepZen stream. I'm Lucia Cerci. I'm a software engineer at StepZen. I love GraphQL and I love solutions that involve it. And I'm here with Jake Cooper today, founder at Railway. Jake, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, yeah, how's it going? I'm Jay Cooper. I'm the just one of the people who just kind of happened upon being able to start Railway, which is a really easy to use cloud platform for basically spinning up anything you'd like. We can spin up databases for you, we can spin up deployments for you, and we can help you kind of scale from, the small side project you've got to like that $1 billion business idea that you want to build. So yeah, that's us.
That's awesome. Jake, I'm super curious to hear what was the moment, so you're the founder or a founder at Railway, right? What was the moment when you were a developer, you hit, what pain point was it that made you throw up your hands and said, I'm going to found a startup?
So it's sort of, I guess, it started by accident. So I had basically left my previous job, Uber, and I was like, cool, I'm going to start something. And so I basically really just needed something super easy to spin up like Postgres instances. I was like, I just need a Postgres instance, like why can't I just have a Postgres instance? It's really small. I just kind of need a VM. I can spin a bunch of these. They don't really take up that much memory. And I was like, cool. And then so I worked on a few other ideas. I wasn't really kind of getting like that kind of like spark or whatever. And I was like, cool, like maybe I'll go take another job. But I kept coming back to this like provisioning engine. And so I was like, okay, cool. Like, this is probably what I want to work on because I keep kind of coming back to it. So I went to the lovely people like GitHub and I was like, you guys must be working on something like this, right? They're like, no, but it's really cool. And then so I went and talked to, people at Vercel, people at a variety of different places. And then kind of came up empty handed there where, and I was like, oh shit, like nobody's kind of building this, I suppose. And so, I showed up with a few friends and they were like, this is really cool. They started kind of just like spinning up databases. And then I guess at some point we were basically fortunate enough to have people want to give us money because they were like, cool, like we think this is really cool, but we're not working on it. Would you take some angel funding? And then at that point, it was just like, oh, okay, cool. I guess this is a business now. And so that's sort of kind of like the origin story. But it was just like, there was never any kind of like really simple, easy to use thing. It was always like banging your head against AWS. It doesn't really matter where you're at. If you're fortunate enough to be at a larger company like Uber, they have some sort of internal tooling. But all of these companies are building these things internally on kind of their own. They're each building kind of like a little bit of flavor, et cetera. And so we want to kind of like unify that experience across like a variety of clouds and for a variety of people and make it like extremely extensible and just like a lot easier so that you can focus on not spinning up the things that you're building, but actually like the applications themselves, right? You can sort of think of it like, if that like quintessential saying of like, you only have like, you're only using 5% of your brain because like the rest of it is like kind of gapped, et cetera. It's like, you're only using like, 5% of your ability to actually build applications because the remaining 95% is spent like occupying like, how do I lay this out? How do I deal with data? How do I spin up this infrastructure, et cetera, right? And so we want to just like make it really easy. And we hope that that will enable people to, build really awesome or amazing things.
Yeah. I love how you pursued the problem and came up with a solution instead of just throwing up your hands and moving away from it. You went into it, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I certainly at StepZen, we feel you on the helping developers use the rest of the 95% of their brain.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about Railway. What are some of the things that make it, I'm scrolling down the homepage here, make it easiest to use? What are some of the most exciting features to you as it stands right now?
Yeah, so I guess there's the product as it stands right now and where we want the product to go. And so I guess I'll start with the kind of products it stands right now. The most exciting thing is honestly like you can just start extremely quickly. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you have a Docker file. It doesn't matter if you have a bundle of code that you're not sure how to deploy. The system will kind of just like, and it's not perfect. It will just asymptotically approach perfection as it kind of like gets better. But I think it's reasonably good at kind of like picking up the intentions behind your code. And so that's the thing that like we're really stoked about is like, a lot of this stuff doesn't necessarily need to be declarative. It should be when you want to like go back and do it, but like just to get kind of like started out of the gates, it should kind of like pick up on your intentions and kind of just like attempt to fill in the blanks, right? And so that kind of like fuzziness that like, the little bit of the helping hand that the platform can leverage, I think is like that's like what we're really, really excited about. Like whether it's like explicit, just like making those actions that you want to do and those intents a lot easier, or implicit by just saying like, hey, listen, they probably just wanted to deploy this Node app because they've got a package JSON. We'll just pick that up and we'll just kind of like move with it. And if their intentions are different, they can go and rectify that, et cetera. But we kind of like move ahead with like our best intent. And so that's what I'm really, really excited about right now. And I think we've got to a point where like, you can spin up like things with state on the platform with reasonable intention. And so we give you tools to access your database. We give you tools to like go and see your deployments and your logs, et cetera. And so what I'm really excited about moving forward is the potential to like build those things out and keep the simplicity of like networking all of your services together while allowing you to extend it to multiple services, right? And so that's whether like, multiple services share a database, or whether, multiple services like interact with each other, making those intentions like one, secure by default, by not having people kind of like look at a list of ports and be like, is my network secure? But just making it supported by default and being like, cool, like these are the services, this is how they talk to each other. You don't have to worry about like, cross chatter or people trying to like go through these vectors. You know exactly in which like the way these services communicate. And so that's what I'm really, really excited about moving forward, as well as like, layering on the functionality, right? Like, so we can start doing alertings for like, when our internal scaling system is scaling your stuff out, being like, hey, listen, like, you're seeing an influx of traffic, just so you know, right? Or, hey, we're seeing this error, right? And so doing like log searching and alerting and stuff like that, and kind of like layering on some really, really neat stuff that we've got planned is like what I'm really excited about in the future.
Yeah, that's all amazing. One thing that I immediately noticed is what's being highlighted on this part of the homepage, which is intuitive interfaces. So let's actually just go to my dashboard here. So what we have is, this is a list of my MySQL database deployments here. And so we'll go to the live stream one. So we've got a bunch of tabs, and a lot of these are really intuitive. Like, tell me about this this Railway link, because I use that, but you also have, I noticed, something that does something similar, which is, so I was wondering if maybe you could talk to the differences between these two, just connecting directly with MySQL. So Railway link goes through Railway. That's correct.
Yes. So all Railway link does under the hood is it actually kind of like links your application to your local file system, right? And so it says like, if you've checked out some application, you can just start working with it locally in the exact same way that you would just if you were kind of like anywhere in that ephemeral environment. It doesn't matter where you are, whether you're in a code server that you've kind of like run, whether you're in like GitHub code spaces, et cetera. You can now access kind of like your global environment, which is like the current environment which you're in, which is in this case, the live stream production environment, right? And you'll see that little like tab switcher on the left. As you kind of like go through the life cycle of your application, we will kind of like track that, right? So whether it's a pull request deploy, we can spin up new MySQL instances, et cetera, and you can kind of connect to them. But like, stepping back to that link command, it basically like connects your local instance with this like notion of your like cloud shared environment, right? And so once you do Railway link, you could do like Railway connect MySQL, and Railway would just pick up that you're in this project on this environment, and therefore I should like run the standard like MySQL shell to go and like kind of connect you to it. And we also do like offer those UIs in the dashboard so that we kind of keep everything like with feature parity, right? So it doesn't matter whether you're on the CLI or whether you're on, dashboard, if you're a ClickOps person, if you're kind of like a hardcore like VI person where you're like, I only want to deal with like command lines and raw SQL,
Right.
like either option is kind of supported there.
Right. That's something that I noticed too, was that I could, when I was managing my database, I prefer running the SQL commands, but I also can create my own tables here, for example. So there's definitely that availability for people who prefer to, I like the word you use, ClickOps versus the hardcore MySQL fans, or just SQL fans.
Yeah. And both options are great. And there's definitely potential for like some overlap too, right? Like there's definitely potential where we can just say like, oh, you just want to run this like random arbitrary MySQL command inside of the dashboard. Like, let's just go for that, right? And those are things we'll be planning on adding later. So yeah, it'll be nice to like blur these lines too, right? When you're like, oh, sometimes I like to work on, like CLI ops, and sometimes I like to work in ClickOps, and these things will be extensible for like not only just yourself, but like any members of the team that you go in and invite, right? And the core thesis with Railway is that like we should work with your team to track your application from, its entire life cycle, from like birth to like all the way scaling up to like, supporting those millions of users that you want to do, right? And that's kind of the goal. And
very cool. And then these are the metrics you're referring to, the ones that you can view at any point, and then you'll get alerts for like
yes,
increases in traffic. Cool.
Yeah, indeed. Right. So you can see the metrics for your MySQL. You can see like, its CPU, its memory. Either we have a bug in the UI right now, or you don't have any deployments. We'll have to figure out which one that is. But yes, you should be able to view like your metrics.
Yeah, I assume we could see by deployments.
Fun. Okay, cool. So I'll have to go and have a look as to why those metrics aren't showing up there. But never without technical difficulty.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So this is variables, which I thought was neat. You were able to set up your own custom environment variables for your production environment here. I haven't had any added for my project, but I just thought that was a cool option that showed up since I started using Railway.
Yeah, it's neat. So I guess I can touch on that a little bit. Like, we want the platform to be like, highly opinionated. Like the anthropology of like the name is that like, Railway, like similar to Ruby on the Rails, like if you stick on the Rails, lots of the things are kind of just like in general set up for you, right? Like when you spin up a MySQL cluster, you probably want to know how to connect to the MySQL cluster. And as a result, we provide those environment variables to you as part of your environment, right? And you can reroute them, you can mux them, you can do whatever kind of you want. We have mechanisms for template variables. You can do stuff with like, recursive templating and like any sort of like really, really cool stuff to construct, the state of your environment as you would like it to exist, right? So.
Cool. All right, so let's get down to connecting. I'm going to use the client command because I'll use some SQL seeding today. Let me grab my terminal down here. Let's see. So I've got part of my screen blocked, but I think I can still grab it. Oops, don't want that. So keys. And then, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment so I can.
Yeah. It's classic Hangouts problems or classic Zoom problems. The bar just like ruining your day.
It is totally. Let's see. Let's go back to, and then I'll share everything again. All right. So let's get started with that connection string. Okay, so then I will pull it down so you can't see my password anymore. And I'm going to grab the seed code here. This is, my coworker wrote this. We'll be using some, or first of all, I think I want to remove, let's see. Remove authors.
Cool. And I will touch on a small thing here.
Right.
The like the Railway link, Railway connects kind of like cycle. That's extremely beneficial because then you don't have to actually like paste your command into a terminal or anything like that. It won't show up in a bash history. It's a lot more kind of like secure mechanism to do that. So that's also an option. But
I love how it won't show up in the history. That's great.
Yes.
It's also just like super easy instead of writing out a very long command every time you want.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. All right, so now we're going to seed with some fresh data.
Cool.
Okay. So I'm gonna see that shows up. Hooray, we've got our tables. Ta-da.
Nice.
That is super, super fun. Okay, so let's see. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to head over to, so far what we've done is we've connected. I've already had this database connected via Railway link, so we were able to directly remove tables with SQL and then seed some new ones and have it show up in the Railway interface. So we'll head over now and start in on the StepZen side of things.
Cool.
But I'm going to check in for questions.
While you're doing that, it's also worth noting, you can actually drop stuff from the UI. So if you command click it, it will select it. And then there's a little trash can where you can just like drop those tables or drop those columns or rows.
Oh, that is awesome.
And I think, yeah, I think we need to do a better job with resurfacing a lot of that. Thankfully, we have just, I mean, not just, they've joined a month ago, and they've got a lot of work from the UIs that we've set up initially, but our wonderful designers working on a lot of those things. So super excited to have them surface a lot of the powerful stuff we've got.
Had I known, I would have done it the first way, the first part, to show off both ways of doing it.
Indeed.
Yes, we have Anthony being a fan over here, but I don't see any
Love
questions
the cheerleading
coming in. Yes. All right, so the next step is we're going to add a GraphQL layer to the database with StepZen. So StepZen is basically provides you an endpoint that can connect all kinds of different backends using our custom directives. Here you can see on the right side of the screen, we've got this directive DB query, we've got REST, and we've got GraphQL, which means that you can bring all these backends, SQL, NoSQL, any REST API or any GraphQL API in together one accessible endpoint. So, and the thing that we're going to be looking at today is going to be, let me pull up my VS Code editor. It's going to be a command called import MySQL. And that will, let's see, actually, we'll probably need to be looking at both Railway and my VS Code for this one. Hopefully people can see. And what StepZen import MySQL does is that it imports a MySQL database schema directly to your endpoint, and then you can deploy it, and you've got everything spun up. But I will show it to you, open my terminal. So I just wanted to mention too, I've got the StepZen CLI, similar to the Railway CLI. I've got that installed on my machine so that I can run commands like this. And then it asks what you would like your StepZen endpoint to be called. I will accept Krusty Monkey. That sounds fun.
Always fun with those generated names. You always get a nice one once in a while.
Right. Host, we're going to grab. I'm also going to need that. Okay, and I'm going to grab the password from my .env. So I am actually here. I'm using an extension. It's called Cloak, and it's kind of I think it's a newish extension. It's by John Papa, but it allows you to hide your .env variables during live streams. So
nice.
Yeah. But
I'll have to download that.
Yeah. Let me just make sure I've got all my. Checking. Looks like this one is hanging right now, but luckily I have a backup. I have a backup schema to show you what running these commands does. So let's go to StepZen to import MySQL. Okay, so running these commands will import this GraphQL file. So, and from it we can run StepZen start, which opens up. It will open up a localhost for you. One thing I find when people who are first using StepZen get started, sometimes there's a point of confusion where this localhost is understood to be your StepZen endpoint, and it is in fact your local graphical explorer that StepZen provides to you, and your endpoint it has the same last two params on an API and hopping elk, but it will have a different prefix on it. So we're going to see if we can get the data out of here. There's going to be, actually, I'm familiar with the database, and there's something that will come in null, so it'll be interesting to see how well StepZen handles the error. So we're getting null there. And then we get the errors printed out, cannot return null for non-nullable field post.publish. So it's like, oh, the database is returning null. Let's remove it.
Nice.
Yeah. And then bam, we've got data coming back. Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, it was very, very quick, very easy. It'd be fun if at the end of the live stream, maybe we could try to do like a speed run of getting up a Railway database and then putting the steps on and seeing how fast we could do it. Because now we're taking our time and discussing it. But so this is the Graphical Explorer. We've added a couple of things on it. Today, we're mostly going to be looking at the GraphQL schema, but if you were going to be looking at consuming it, you could say hit export, and if you were using a Apollo client, you'd have some code to just, instead of like typing out all that boilerplate.
Yeah. I didn't even notice
like
that.
Gatsby one. Yeah.
That's slick.
So that's something that I like about it. For sure. Yeah. And then let's get to looking at what exactly we've imported here. So we've got types kind of inferred based on the database tables, right? And what the tables columns are. So we've got categories, int and string. Posts. So we've got body, which is an ID. That's interesting. Let me see. I'll change it to a string and see if that it's just because, and see if that changes anything. That should be updated. That's the other nice thing, is that you can change things in your schema and then see them change automatically. So nothing happened. I changed it to a string. So that's probably what it's meant to be. And then here's something I really like. So in GraphQL, you have, you've got Booleans, you've got ints, floats, strings, and IDs. But StepZen provides you with a couple of extra scalar types at your disposal. And one of them is datetime, which is convenient for just so many APIs, right? Because datetime, like we're all familiar, it's just an incredibly important part of data.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then here we've got a bunch of ints. This is linking categories, IDs, and post IDs. And then we've got our query type. And here is where you can see dbQuery doing its kind of magic on the StepZen. So what this is doing is it's connecting us to the database, and it's telling StepZen, this is MySQL database. It's telling which table to connect it to. And we've got a configuration. I'm not going to show you our configuration that it auto-generated for us, but this is generally what it will look like. Replace the password here.
Right.
But that just tells StepZen, like, this is the DSM to use to connect. Yeah. So right now, what dbQuery is doing is kind of inferring a kind of select star from this table, right? When we go back to the graphical, we would see like all the categories that were present in the database. But we can get more detailed than that because this Materializer accepts different arguments. So we can also take a look and add this and see what happens. So this query right here takes in an ID and returns categories based on that ID. And what we've done is we've got type and we've got configuration, but the query, instead of table, we've got a query set up where we're selecting the ID and name from the post categories and joining it where the category ID is equal to the post, like its corresponding post ID. And then that should be deployed to our graphical endpoint. So let's switch over there. And there it is. Or let me make sure I'm showing you the right one. Sometimes with schemas and all their names, I get categories.
It looks right.
It's this one.
Yeah, there you go.
And I believe one of the IDs is 24. So let's try that one. Perfect.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good
yeah. So that's something that I really enjoy when I'm spinning up databases with StepZen, is the ability to either, kind of sit back and relax, or get as detailed as I want with writing MySQL with the query. It's kind of like that same matrix you were discussing between people who want to sit back and kind of click develop, or get their hands dirty and write all this.
Yeah, right. Very much the same kind of like popping the hood open vibe and being like, okay, cool. Like actually, I really want to just like dive in here and make sure that these are the right things that come back. Cool.
Right. And something else that this query illustrates is when it comes to GraphQL, one of the advantages that a GraphQL layer gives you is that you're able to kind of define what data you want versus what data is there, which is how databases work, right? It's just like, it's the tables, it's columns, that's what we got, and that's how we've got to write SQL to select it. But here, in this GraphQL layer, we're morphing it so that if you wanted to get a category by the post ID, you can do that. And that's something that the consumer of the API or the front-end developer might want more than back-end developer who is managing the database, right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. All right, so this is something that I also want to look at. This is Materializer. It's a directive that it's called Materializer because it materializes a query.
Yes.
So we're going to do it on, I believe I had it on type posts. And so say you're a front-end developer and you're looking at this type and you say, well, I want every query with the post type in it to return the categories for the posts too.
Yes.
I'm just going to show a naive use of Materializer first, and then we'll move on to the real usage. Or not the real usage. Every usage is real usage, but a more refined usage of Materializer. And so you would return these little brackets in GraphQL. I mean, you're returning an array, right? And you say, oh, this will return an array for categories from a post. And Materializer is the custom directive that takes a query argument, and then you refer to that query inside the brackets.
Same one we've got below there. Perfect.
Yes, right. And we'll save, make sure that's deployed. Okay, and so, oh, look, we've got categories showing up in here. And we'll grab the ID and name and I'm actually going to take out published and body because body makes the data look a little chunky. But for this post, you can see it's dog post 1, and it's got a cats category. And the reason for that is your Materializer is pulling in all of the categories based on the query that we put in. Right. So we're going to have to get a little fancier with it.
A little more refined, if you will.
Yes. Yeah.
Ta-da. Nice. I think we're going to see some real power of this right here.
Right. So we've introduced the arguments. Leaf fields cannot. Oh, interesting. What did I do here? Oh, I think I know exactly. I took away
the categories part. Yeah, I think it should go on the back of the categories, right? Because then it'll refine it.
Yes, thank you for.
Ta-da!
And there, so that's another example. I'm really pleased as someone who creates a lot of StepZen samples with our error handling, because you could see right away it caught. It was like, hey, you can't put Materializer on a leaf fields,
Yep.
Yeah. So that's one of the things about using StepZen that I like to sing about as it were. But
yeah, it's great.
Yeah. And so we've got this argument, and the name refers to the name of the field here that we're grabbing. And it's a little bit confusing because these are both named ID, right? But, and this field is what's the value from here that's filling the value here will fill. So basically posts ID is going to fill this parameter down here. Yes. So let's try and see if we get the correct ones. If I can grab my Chrome again. There we go. All right, now we've got categories again. See if it brings in the right one. Yeah, we've got dog mapped to dog and cats mapped to cat. Yeah.
Lovely. Cool. Yeah, so getting really graphical with that data, and just like letting you kind of just like define those routes and then really, really easily retrieve like anything that you would kind of want.
Right. The idea is that you know, you reshape the data declaratively in StepZen, makes that easier. Something else that Materializer can do that's not evident from here because we're only working with one backend is that you can materialize queries from other backends, which is very convenient for tying data together.
Yeah. We've also noticed at Railway that GraphQL just like provides this like unreal way to like federate your data across like whether it's multiple backends, multiple databases, multiple microservices, etc. So it's like really, really unparalleled. Netflix has actually a very, very good blog post about like how they've laid out kind of a lot of their like federated edges. So it's definitely stellar.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. So I am a little new to StreamYard and I'm just looking at new comments right now because I'm trying to check on our questions, but I think Anthony is still cheering us on. So yeah, that's to summarize, we changed some data in a database that was deployed on Railway, and then we through directly connecting to it, and then we spun up a StepZen layer on it. And really, that was all done in just a few commands. So I think it would be fun to try like a little speed run here.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's see if I can. So let's see, what time is it right now? It's 12:32, and we should probably start in the Railway interface. Let's go. All right.
Before you start the clock, I think it would be lovely in the future if we could actually like, we have this concept of starters, which allows anybody to kind of like get started with like, whether it's like, you know, a spun up Discord app, which connects to Postgres, et cetera. I think it would be lovely to have like a StepZen starter where you could just like click it and then cool, boom, you're away to the races. You've got kind of something already pre-configured, and then everybody can kind of just like play with this and get the kind of power out of the box. I know it wasn't hard at all for anybody to kind of, you know, for us to go through this whole process already. We're going to speed run it too. But, you know, I'm one of those people who just like, you know, hyper optimizes, right? So it's like, you know, if we could start with like that, it's like, boom, like we're way to the races even quicker.
Yeah, no, so we do have something like that coming down the pipes, in fact, and we can also, you can also just import directly certain REST backends, as well as, hold on one second. Yeah. All right. It's just Anthony helping me out with some StreamYard stuff. But yeah, we have that coming down the pipe. So where do you suggest we start for Railway? Because I think I've maxed out my deployments, so we can start with a deployed one maybe.
Okay. Yeah. Well, okay, you've maxed out your deployment. Interesting. I mean, I would normally recommend that people just like go to dev.new and then you just go to MySQL. But if you already have kind of a deployed thing, then we can either spin one of those projects down if one of them just like is kind of like for test, et cetera, or we could just like start inside of a project and then just like see how quickly we can just kind of like go from like an empty MySQL all the way up to like all of this data.
Yeah. Let's do it. Let's start with one of these.
Cool.
Let's try this one.
Oh, also, actually, you should try and create another project because we actually just eliminated the project limit as of Wednesday because we switched over to all of the usage stuff. So you might be able to just actually like create it unless we've messed up that flow.
Let's try it.
It's a startup, right?
Let's provision MySQL. I like the little versioning containers and then just like loosening the caboose. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
All right, awesome. So the first thing, right, since I have this installed, is connecting to the project. And hopefully, gonna stop sharing for a moment.
Cool.
All right, and I will keep it not shared while I just grab the connection string.
Cool, cool. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then let's go back to sharing again. Let's just grab this seed data once more. Let that run. Excellent. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a new terminal.
Cool.
Go to these guys. Okay, now we're in that folder. Great.
Cool.
That will be fine, the hissing tortoise.
Cool. Mm-hmm.
Is your host. I'll grab it from Railway.
Oh, there you go. I think there's a space on the end of that too. You might want to, you could grab these also from the variables section, which will be, might be a little easier, but
Okay.
right, you just pop that open, and then if you just see, well, I guess you gotta kind of click through these. There's a copy button on one of these, the little double there, should just copy it to your clipboard, and then you can just.
That is wonderful. Database name should be
Weird.
And then I will stop sharing for just one moment.
Cool.
Password. Oh, let me see. I'm just gonna. I forgot to add the host at the end of the string. Just one moment.
Mm-hmm.
Just run through those steps real quick. It's eating into our time.
Yeah. Always opportunities for us to make this easier for people, which is always kind of like, you know, the nice thing about doing these.
Right. That's what I find too. Is
right. It's like free user interviews. You're like, oh, cool. I get to sit down with these people and use both sides of this coin.
Oh yeah, it's definitely like that. All right, and then. All right, I'll go back to share. Okay, so now what we have got is we've said, it says successfully imported one schemas from StepZen. So we can see that we've got schema imported. So I'm just gonna pull it up on. So this is, I must have been missing the host name or something on the first round, but this is, again, it will see a very similar, and that was all done within, we started at 4, so 5 minutes is how long that took us, which is, it just speaks to the speed of low code solutions, especially when you combine them, because that's how fast it took us to connect to your deployed database and then start at a StepZen GraphQL layer. But we've got here the same schema. We've got that config YAML, which I will not show you here, but we looked at earlier. And then we've got index.graphql. Now, index.graphql is actually something I'd like to talk about for a moment. It should be here. So when I'm teaching people about StepZen, I think it's less evident when you've got one schema STL file like here, which is like, that's fine, right? Because we have 3 tables in this database. But say you're planning to scale and you wanted to make it easier for future developers, you would have like a file like type.graphql, right? And then one like queries.graphql. And then you could take, your query type and put it in here. And then I'm going to leave the types in here and just show you how StepZen reacts here, because it's something, it says bad request, at least one query operation must be defined. So the reason why it's giving us that error is because, let me just get rid of these, because if we dig through this, I want to show a different error, which was that it'll tell you if you have two same types, but it's got to knit them all together first. The reason it's showing you that error is that it StepZen reads in the files from this index.graphql file. So if we add queries here, and
there you go, and it's just spewing out all the right errors. It's like a Rust compiler level of helpful.
And we should get a green reply here, unless I have a small typo, which often happens when I copy and paste that quickly. But
yep,
and
me
then
too.
We've got the same data available.
Boom, there you go. Bam, bam, bam.
Yeah. So.
What are we in and out in less than 10 minutes?
Yeah. If you count it completely, I think it took 5, which is just a testament to Railway and StepZen, I think. So.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's like you said, right? Like you can combine all these like low code together tools, and then you get kind of like the benefits of the speed of the no code stuff, while also still having you that, like, let's pop the hood open and let's like actually explore kind of the code and like change any of the stuff that we need. You get VCS, you get version control, you get kind of all of the benefits that you want, but you also get up and running real quick. So that's sweet. Yeah. And also that 5 minutes includes a little bit of fiddling with the StreamYard. So I think it's even
Yeah, definitely. 5 minutes includes a bit of a user error. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Awesome.
Cool.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Jake. I had a good time.
Thank you for having me. This was wonderful. You orchestrated this stream like very, very well. I feel like a great just like passenger, kind of just like coming along with you for this ride. So thank you for having us. It was really, really great.
Yeah. We were honored to have you as a guest. Railway's wonderful products. Really enjoy
it. Same with StepZen. This is sweet.
All right.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, I see. No. Anthony has one question. Are there any security concerns giving access to your local environment using the link command? I think that's a Railway one.
Yeah, for sure. So all the projects are protected by like Railway's authentication system. So unless you have access to the project, that link command will fail. And that setup command is only shown. You can share around that project ID. You could try and run the link command. I could try and run that link command and would say I just don't have access to it unless you share the project with me, in which case I could go and have access to those environments, right? And in the near future, we're actually going to add like more granular permissions on environments themselves. So if you only wanted, access for the development environment for yourself, and you wanted to keep production for kind of like, only a few people, or you wanted to just like restrict access for environment variables across kind of like mostly the whole company for production, like that is something that you could also do, right? But no, there's not really any sort of like security concerns, but there could definitely be a little bit more granularity in terms of like, allowing specific people to see kind of like specific things, but it is a walled garden, so to speak.
Yeah, that's great level of detail, very confidence, confidence raising. So that's awesome.
Right.
Well, thank you so much. This has been really fun, and perhaps
again. Thanks for having me. This was wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.